It is Friday the 20th of March, 2020. Or if you write 3, however you write it, right? Because some people, right? Good. But it's still the 20th day of March in the year 2020. I almost say 2019, right? Because I kind of want this to go back. 2019, we apologize for all the bad things we said about you. But here we are. Good morning, everybody. It is Friday. The kind of different kind of Friday. It's a quarantine Friday. But nonetheless, we are right. And joining us this morning, of course, one of the biggest events that we look forward to around this time of the year is a night of love, and that was carded for Mother's Day weekend. It would have been Saturday, May 11th, and we have with us this morning the wonderful Akira Patterson. She's a promotions and marketing manager with Sunshine Promotions, and she's here to give us some news about a night of love. First of all, Akira, good morning.
Good morning, Brenda.
Long time no see.
Right? I wish I could hold you and hug up and squeeze you, but
for the first
the
time
times weren't. Listen, but the energy good still. You understand? The energy good still. Yes. Good morning to all of the listeners, to all of the viewers, whether it's on social, live on GBN television, on the radio stations. Good morning. I hope you're keeping safe during these unpredictable times.
Man, for real.
Yeah.
For real. That's paramount, safe. Right. So, of course, a night of love. We were scheduled to have that big event on Saturday, May 11th. So that's like about a couple.
Yeah, it's less than 8 weeks actually. This Monday would have been the 8th week, counting down to the event. It's our flagship event from Sunshine Promotions. It is a brand. The Night of Love brand is one that's very fond in the hearts of numerous Grenadians as well as people from the region and in the diaspora as well. So it is very unfortunate, that we are, today announcing that we will be canceling the event that was carded for this year 2020, but it's in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, and as a company that's always very socially responsible, and we always put the health and safety of our patrons first, it was apparent that we had to take these measures to ensure the safety of Grenadians on a whole, but also our patrons specifically, and in addition to that, the performers that would have been coming in. It's a bit sad because we dropped the Taurus artwork, and everybody was so enthusiastic about it. Unanimous agreement with the selection of that act, and we had other big ones to drop as well. So you could imagine how disappointing it is for us with this event specifically, and because it's a Mother's Day event, it's not just a regular event, it's an event with a cause, and we were looking forward to bringing our promotions to again support mothers throughout Grenada and try to see how we could bring a light to all of the great works that mothers do throughout, but in times like these we must sit and assess the importance and what is relevant and significant for all. And when it comes to Sunshine Promotions, if it's a question of business or the health and safety of Grenadians and all involved, it's a no-brainer to us. It's a non-issue. So we've taken the step to cancel the show. And we have been in communication, with our partners because we have partners who have signed on years in advance. We have partners who we have 3-year contracts with, etc. So we have been in constant communication with them. In addition to that, we've been in constant communication with our performers who have been slated to, appear on the show. Namely, I'll speak about Taurus and his team because they are the ones that all of Grenada knew, about already. Yes, and we were actually supposed to drop the major headliners last Sunday. And when assessing the situation, we were like, you know what? We can't go ahead in good faith.
No.
Because having a show and having an event is contrary to what the watchwords of the times now are, which is social distancing, ensuring that, there are low density gatherings to ensure that this, virus has a handle, that we are able to curb the implications. And not because we haven't had any confirmed cases in Grenada as yet, doesn't mean that we can go around recklessly, thinking that, Grenada is blessed above all, even though we would like to believe so. We must put precautionary measures in place. And this is definitely one of them. So we spoke to the artists, they themselves were a bit disappointed, but we have really good relationships with the artists that we bring here, and they understand it's for the greater good. And likewise, because Taurus's team is in Jamaica and they themselves, are facing the onset of this virus in their community, first of all, our hearts go out to them. And, Jamaica holds a very special place in my heart. I studied there, I lived there for 4 years, great people. But, separate and apart from that, we want to ensure that everybody is well. So they are under quarantine, in certain areas, and they are restricting, flying and stuff like that. And then it brings us also to the fact that, artists will have to fly, they would have to travel to get to Grenada. That again is another issue.
Risk.
Yes, and then a lot of the recreational travel has been restricted. Only essential travel is really happening, especially with Caribbean Airlines, who's our, primary carrier of the artists from Jamaica. They are facing issues in Trinidad as well, and they're restricting their travel. And we understand and we respect that, because it's a time that calls for solidarity and a different level of patriotism.
Absolutely.
Where we will need to have, to make sacrifices, and we will need to put the greater good ahead of our individual, thoughts, our individual, benefits and aspirations. And so I believe this is the best decision. We've also spoken to our local stakeholders, and they are all, on board. Our corporate sponsors who have been on board with us with this event for years, they understand it's an event that they're fond of and they look forward to as well. But at the end of the day, we are all good corporate citizens, and we all endeavor to put the safety and security of Grenadians before anything else. And, it would not be in good faith to be promoting an event, during these times. It's just not what's on people's minds. It's not the primary thought, and it would be irresponsible of us to do so. And our team are human as well. We have the same issues, we have the same concerns, and we're faced with the same, problems. So we're really advocating that, all of Grenada, our patrons, our supporters understand, the decision that we were faced with. And I believe that they do, and they could understand that it's in the best interest of themselves, the public. And in addition to that, we also want to encourage them to adhere to the guidelines, of the public officials. Don't think that, we're above precaution because we're not seeing the immediate implication. This is just making its way. This is just making its way into the Caribbean. There's no way to predict the implications that it'll have on various sectors, at things that I am particularly concerned with. Travel, accommodation, entertainment, it's going to definitely have an impact on these sectors, on the industries.
As we speak this morning, lots of people that we know and love in hotel and restaurants.
Exactly.
They're without a job.
Exactly.
And they don't know for how long.
Exactly. So, we have to realize that the world is going to be, and our lives, our day-to-day lives are going to be a bit different, and we have to rise to the occasion as a nation to ensure that we protect ourselves. Because even though, some within among us may think that, we're untouchable, because of age or because of whatever, and we believe we could be reckless, the fact of the matter is that we're all linked as an extended society, and we cannot make other people vulnerable or at risk because of our reckless behavior. So it's a time that calls for mindfulness from all of us, and then after this has been quelled and after the virus has been under control and we have gotten the right ways of dealing with it, you know, whether it's a vaccine, whether it's antibodies or all of these things like that, we could look forward to normalizing and then having conversations about how we can go back to the regular mode of operation. But all for now, we must take the precautionary measures.
And in these times, in our socialization and social distancing, social or physical distancing, because social sound nice, but really, I like to say physical distancing.
It's a more palatable way to put it, but physical distancing.
Correct. Like yesterday, I had just to digress a bit, a doctor here from SGU.
Right.
And, you know, one of my friends is asking me, Brenda, please ask him about deep kissing. And he said, well, you know, in social distancing, deep kissing. I said, and then he explained, he gave all the scientific. I said, but kissing, physical. He said, so no.
Right.
So no deep kissing, no kissing.
You know, I mean, it's definitely a strange time. And, you know, as human beings, we're emotional beings. You know, we like to commune with each other. We like to be around each other.
We are social beings.
We are.
But in the grand scheme of things, it calls for social responsibility.
Yes.
And how can companies and promotion companies like yourselves, you know, be worth your pound of salt if you really do not adhere to social responsibility at this time?
And truth be told, you know, even prior to this becoming a parent issue in Grenada and the wider Caribbean, we have been tracking, you know, the spread of the virus from since December, around that time, late November, December, you know, when it started in Wuhan and started spreading throughout China, because the world is not pockets of isolated areas. It is not. Village. You know, it really is. And with travel and with, you know, communication and global trade and all of that, it's very easy for something that affects a neighboring country to just spread.
You see, touching my face anyway, sanitize before.
I'm grabbing my hands because I gesticulate a lot, so I try to.
Me too. I'm a handy person.
I have to work on myself.
But I keep sanitizing. See the color of my hand changing. But anyhow. It's a normal thing though. But you know, globalization used to sound like this big scientific maths physics kind of term. But this virus has really brought it home. Because not just the what is happening with the virus in terms of affliction, but in how it's impacting all of our lives. Everywhere in the world. So it has really brought the message of globalization home.
Yes, every facet of it. And you really understand, you know, that even though we can't necessarily see each other, how intertwined and how connected we are as a people, you know, it calls for us to really be conscious about how our individual actions can have implications on people who we have not met before, who we have not seen, you know, so it calls for a greater level of patriotism, you know, when we talk about 473 and we talk about loving Grenada, this is how we do that, because this is the only way that we could ensure that our country, you know, continues, because there will be life after Corona. I don't, you know, want to advocate the daunting. We have to adjust. But at the end of the day, it's based on the measures that we put in place now. It's based on, you know, our commitment and our unity as a country to adhere and be disciplined. It calls for self-discipline.
A lot of discipline.
Exactly, to see the extent and to be able to manage or mitigate the effects that this would have, because, you know, just looking at the implications, not just on health, because, you know, you see all of the issues that could possibly happen as a result of people not being able to socialize, you know, and all of these industries.
Every time we've had a crisis of any kind, of trauma, we have been able to
band together,
get our social selves to a place where we can find comfort, solace, whether it be for an hour, 5 hours, a couple minutes. But we're going through this.
And we don't
and it's
have
like
that.
they tell you, listen, you gotta stay away.
Yeah, because every person could possibly be a threat.
So we now have to, I mean, listen, this is almost like a reinventing of human socialization.
Definitely.
And we have it to know, we just need to find it.
Yeah, we need to find creative ways to stay connected. Because in the disconnection, I don't want us to become disassociated with what it means to be human.
Nor desensitized.
Not desensitized.
Because we were, it's almost like we were on our axis with the amount of desensitization. And then bam.
Yeah. Exactly. And just looking at the effects in other countries, even Caribbean countries, because specifically that's where I look. I look at the US situation. I know what's happening in Italy. I know what's happening in Iran. I know what's going on in the Gaza, but at the end of the day, the Caribbean situation is very close to home for us. And it's the closest model that we'll have in looking at how the virus progresses in other countries to see how we could possibly deal with it if we have to deal with it. So that is something that has always, been on my radar in terms of looking. Very good practices there. Very good practices. Coughing into your elbow. World Health Organization, Pan American Health Organization sanctioned practices.
I can't be here telling people to do these things
and
don't doing it.
Don't practice it, right?
And nothing wrong with me. We could still cough and we could still sneeze. You just have to do it the right way.
Yes, and looking at the situation, a lot of the times people would hear somebody sneeze or see somebody cough and just behave very drastic. In times of crisis, we really need to be more conscious and be more aware of our fellow man. The essential items that people need. We really need to be mindful as shop providers and stuff to keep the prices at where the regulated prices are. I have to say that because that's how, we cope. That's how we deal, and that's how we're able to bounce back.
That's the dark side of
we
us.
We have to address these things because at the end of the day, we are our neighbor's keeper, and this is a point in time that we're more reliant on ourselves than we've ever been before. So we have to think about others, because if we were in that situation of someone wanting assistance, I was looking at the press conference in Jamaica, and there were some instances where people were denying people, access to their shops, so that they could purchase certain things because they're off a quarantine area. So it's not only in isolation in Grenada that we have certain thoughts, but when these thoughts arise, we have to rise above it and let our humanity prevail.
For real. And we have to jump ahead of certain things. We have to jump ahead of certain things and mitigate. It's only a week today. Thank you, Dolores. I love you. It's only a week ago today that the Prime Minister addressed the country around midday.
Yes.
And when he spoke about the measures with schools and our use of public transportation and what we should continue to do. And so for the most part, folks queued into the message and they were tuned in and they were like, but with everything that was happening, a lot of people were like, well, why are you doing that? Why?
Yeah.
But if we don't have any cases, why do you want to do that? You know? And a lot of people questioned. They had, they had doubts as to why it was being done and so on and so forth. But it seems as the more we look, and as you mentioned this thing in Jamaica, we have to be a step ahead. We have to
be very visionary.
Yes, we have to be a step ahead.
When it comes to this, we have to
be a step ahead. And it's great that, somebody might say, well, a Night of Love is supposed to be on the 11th of May. Why 8 weeks away? They're canceling it. We don't know what's going to be happening
because it is slated for then, but because the
when you spray things into the air, Joseph, you're going to make me cough. Good morning, Joseph.
Love Joseph. Yeah, but honestly, with all things said, it's fairly early in the Caribbean situation because we're just seeing 2 cases, we're just seeing 3 cases, 9 cases, 13 cases, and it's we know that this virus has the potential to spread exponentially. So it's not spreading in a linear way, it's spreading in all directions.
That's right.
And because of that, it's very difficult to predict what the next 8 weeks are going to look like, what the next 7 weeks are going to look like. But it also calls for a greater attention to what we're supposed to be focusing on for these next 7 to 8 weeks, because life could possibly go in any direction. And while we do continue to pray and do continue to hope that, we're able to cope with this and we're able to put measures in place so that it does not spread within Grenada, it calls for us to be precautionary like that. So when we hear certain communications, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to come in to have a conversation as opposed to just putting out the press release, because I really don't want people to give a knee-jerk reaction and add to the pandemonium, because sometimes when you're distanced from people, you have a tendency to go into a state of your own recollection, for real. And your own type of introspection. And because of that, people tend to go to a worst case scenario, especially in times of crisis, and so it's very important for us when we're consuming information to try to discern exactly what is being said and do not let any paranoia get to us, because the worst thing that you need in a time of crisis is panic.
And don't try to think, well, how come she didn't say that? Why he not saying that? Just consume what you're hearing. Try and break down what you're hearing. Do not add additional wrinkles to your face and clumps to your heart.
And this press release that I did took it was like one of the most thoughtful ones that I've ever done, because you have to choose every single word, carefully and
to kind of address
of course,
all your constituents, so to speak.
And it took me back to courses in crisis communication and being so you have to be vigilant in every single thing that you say, because it's not just the intent behind the message, it's how the audience consumes the message. So we must always be mindful, because there's always knee-jerk reactions, because after that everybody rushed to the supermarket, and I was at work and I'm wondering, well, what's going on? But you will understand why people could be frantic, because you're faced with something that you cannot predict, that you've never dealt with before, you cannot see,
the unknown.
And it is the unknown. It's like you're just in the dark and you're trying to prepare. But we need to be focused. We need to be cautious, and we need to try to let sense prevail.
Indeed. Well, thank you so much, Sunshine Promotions, for doing that. A night of love, ladies and gentlemen, just in case you're joining us. It's been cancelled. A night of love, which was scheduled for Saturday, May 11th. And that is normally Sunshine Promotions. Love promotion.
Love promotion.
Love event.
And I want to leave people on a high, on a good note, because we are very resilient people as Grenadians. We have been faced with numerous difficulties and disasters before, and we were able to rally and really come above it. And I believe that this is another trying time that's going to test the best of us, and it's going to test the weakest in us as individuals. But if we really, band together and do what we're supposed to, we will see life after Corona. And in addition to that, we are looking forward to staging a major event in 2021, because we will be celebrating 20 years as an entertainment company.
Imagine?
20 years of having the same events over and over from since 2001. And so the artists that were carded, those that you know of and those that you do not know of, that were carded to perform this year will be performing next year, in addition to the artists that we have next year as well. So it's going to be a mega celebration. So that's something to look forward to. So be cautious, practice, the proper protocols, the proper guidelines handed down to us by the public health officials, by the Ministry of Health, World Health Organization, PAO, and ensure that, we really do our part, as businesses, as individuals, as citizens, you know, whether promoters or not, because promoters are people too.
Yeah.
And, you know, at least at Sunshine Promotions, we try to ensure that we keep the best interest of people at heart. So we are 100% compliant with those protocols, and we're looking forward to overcoming it, to life normalizing again, and then to bringing these events that Grenadians, people in the region and people in the diaspora have become so fond, you know, to. So we're looking forward to that. So there is hope.
Thank you. Of course.
There is hope. There's always hope. Don't be too daunted. There is always hope.
Yeah.
Be courageous.
Yeah.
And buy what you need. Please.
Yeah, that's easy to say when you're worried about.
It's easy to say, but you see, the thing is too, I think because we're so inundated by international news, we're responding to the situation that's happening in the world.
Yes.
And we're not, you know, assessing our local situation. It's difficult, and we understand, but just in those moments, just try to be mindful. Just try to bring it all back.
Out of everything, there are these nuggets. I mean, look how much fish has become available in Grenada for great prices.
God, for great prices.
Yeah, fill up the freezer with fish.
Stock up.
Yeah,
stock up on the right things, and leave some for your fellow man.
Leave the pig alone for now. Leave the sheep alone for now. Leave the goat alone for now. Let them thrive.
Yeah, because we have to do things.
Yeah.
And you know, just before I leave, in addition to that, I think that we always need to be vigilant as people in terms of what we can do individually to protect ourselves. You know, we're having a lot of reactionary procedures right now, you know, vitamin C, all of these things that we know we should incorporate into our diets daily. We know we should have vegetables. We know we should, you know, have certain things to help boost our immune system, you know, natural foods, things that we grow, stuff like. Try to incorporate it. Stay ready so you don't have to get ready. You know, just try.
Yeah, we're all learning through this.
Definitely. There's a lot of blessings that's coming out of this as well, but we have to have the knowledge to recognize that
and embrace it.
And embrace it.
Things happen.
Yeah.
Thank you so very much.
Always a pleasure.
I love
air hugs.
I know.
Air hugs. I've been giving a lot of air hugs lately.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Good morning to those of you saying morning. Depo is saying good morning on
morning,
Facebook.
Depo, morning.
Don't stifle your sneeze, never.
No.
Ben in Melbourne. Hi, Andre Harry. Good morning to you.
Definitely.
Lydon Tobin is watching from Maryland. Hey, stay safe out there. Good morning.
Stay safe.
Pantry is saying, I'm not sure I can survive without deep kissing. You can. You can.
Hold the faith.
Hold the faith. Think about, get creative.
Yes.
Get creative. That's all I could say.
Definitely. It's a creative time.
Yeah.
And we've been seeing that people have been doing so many creative stuff to try to stay connected. You know, people have been singing across of their houseways, you know, in Italy
beautiful.
And all. Yeah.
Yes.
And social media too is helping people deal because people are, you know, sharing videos and stuff like how to wash their hands and all of these things. So good is definitely coming out of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for stopping by, Kiki.
It's always a pleasure.
Love and blessings.
Safe. Love and blessings to everyone.
Family.
Thank you.
Rasta, good morning. Good morning.
Yes,
blessed love to you. And to everybody.
Yes.
All right. And so there you have it, folks. A Night of Love 2020, May 11th, Saturday, May 11th. Sunshine Promotions has taken the responsible move to cancel the event. So look forward to Night of Love 2021. It's going to be 20 years of good fun. Some kind of intervention there, you know.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Right.
Take a break and then you...
Yeah, catapult into greatness.
Man. Anyway, folks, we take a quick break. We'll be right back. When we come back, remember, I promised to continue our dissection of that great book by Mr. William Joseph. He's here, and we'll be having that conversation when we come back. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Thanks again.
Are you bold, vibrant, full of color and life, with energy waiting to just burst out? That youthful vibe? Or are you a classic? You love the old school, but you still know how to keep it relevant. Kinda like a retro mix. Nah? Hey, maybe you're just refined. A fine, classy, chic piece of refined elegance. No matter who you are, Sissons has that outside color to match that inside feeling. Visit any of our retail or distribution outlets and ask for our tropical modern color collection. Sissons, good looks that lasts.
Feel good tax.
Remember, if you have flu symptoms, do the right thing and stay at home to avoid giving it to others. Remember, you can be infectious up to a week after developing symptoms, so rest up and take it easy.
Part of our social media revamp, the GBN is committed on providing accurate information by just one click through our social media platforms. You can now follow our Facebook page at GBN Television, together with our sister stations Classic FM Grenada and Hot FM Grenada. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, Grenada Broadcasting Network. They say one picture is worth 1,000 words. Now you have the opportunity to follow us on Instagram at GBN_news and our newly added WhatsApp feature to our news and current affairs department on telephone number 473-405-3052. GBN, with you, anywhere, everywhere.
Stop the spread of germs that can make you and others sick. Cover your nose and mouth with a tissue when you cough or sneeze. If you don't have a tissue, use your elbow. Wash hands often, especially after coughing or sneezing into a tissue.
to the mid-morning buzz. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. And of course, we continue on with our program on this Friday morning. And it's a great pleasure to have back with me Mr. William B. Joseph. He is the author of the book, The Grenada Revolution, Answers, Legacies, and Footprints, a Leadership Guide to the Young Grenadian. So we started our trek last week. And it's a pleasure to have you back. Of course, we are going to be continuing this as we go through the book. And my book, you know, ladies like to change bags. My book is in my bag. This morning, I decided I wanted a more casual bag. So I put on the little clutch I had and I pick up my suitcase. And I remember, but it's in my book is in my head because I'm on
that's what I thought.
Yes. Because I'm on my second dose of reading. Because that's only the second. I'll get to it about 5 times, especially now that we're inside. But it's a pleasure to have you back here with us.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. And last week when we left off, we were really talking about we were looking at the. I think I left saying that we wasn't too sure that whether or not the revolutionary folks whether or not that they in their mind understood, because you said their revolution was about them and the PRG,
the party NGM,
right? The party owned,
yes,
right. So whether or not this joint leadership thing, it just resonated with them and not the people, and whether this social experiment was going to work.
Yeah. Well, you know, good morning, everyone, and thank you again, Brenda. But I think it's evident. It's very, very clear that they locked themselves up into a little cocoon, studying or trying to learn about this ideology, and the more they did that, the more they saw themselves as a group apart from the ordinary Grenadian set, because supposedly they were now superior, you know. And I say it, and guys would remember that was the mood, the atmosphere at the time. So if you were not a member of the NGM, you were somehow a second class, quote unquote. You see, so there was this superiority bred from the fact that they were studying this Marxist-Leninist stuff and so on. So I discussed this in the book, that in fact many of them, in fact I don't even know whether Osu himself, who mounted the proposal, really understood what it meant, because it was given to him to put forward.
Right, yes, in the book you highlight that. And that it was the first time I saw that. Yeah. And that's the thing about your book, I mean, is that I've read a lot of work on the revolution. I even have all the court papers and all of that.
Okay.
Because sometimes when people talk things, I just be like, okay, but this is what it is in black and white. Yeah. But unless they were lying in there. But it was the first time that I became aware that it was Owusu who mouthed the joint leadership proposition.
You see, it's very important, and in terms of how I approached the building of the book, because I was very, very determined that it should not be a storybook. That's something that gives an account of every little thing that transpired. But what I sought to do was to identify the pattern of behavior, the pattern of decision making, and to unlock that. Explain why it is that the particular decision was made, what was behind it. You see, what informed it, right? And
that's the thing that makes it so stark from the others.
Yes. Which is what Carrie, I think, in her comment, I really caught on to, and I thought she was entirely correct. I said very jokingly in one place that I have never read an account of the devil that details all of his sins.
Listen, I wrote that down because I'm very active on social media, and I like to sometimes, depend on how I'm feeling, or even not how I'm feeling, but something would just hit me on a day, and I post it. I wrote that one down because I was like, I am gonna need this. This is so brilliant. So I wrote it down. Yeah, you're so right. You're so right about that. Wow.
Yeah, so once we identify the pattern, we know that it is the devil. So one is not going to find in my text every little minutia, every little detail of this and that, because what I've done is to pull out the big picture, the big issues, and to break them out, break them down, analyze them, and really expose, really take them to the point of showing what it is that the particular thing meant.
Right. We want to, and that's how we're probably going to look at this book, the big issues, the style, some of the things that happened well, didn't happen too well. But we must, in order to, I think, to kind of establish that, we must pay some attention to, because if this is a guide to the young Grenadian on leadership, then we must pay attention to the central figures of this thing. And at the time, those central figures were, we have Gary, who was, of course, overthrown. And then once the PRG took over, it was Maurice Bishop and Bernard Cord. So let's look at these central figures and, since we're doing guide to leadership, let's look at their characters and personalities and so on.
Yeah. Well, it's a very important issue, and to the extent that the experiences that we had over the years with these particular leaders can be framed into a pattern. All right. To that extent, then we could try to understand something about ourselves in relation to not just being led, but to our choice of leadership, right? Meaning leaders. So Eric Gary stands out in the context in which he practiced his leadership at the time of the Grenadian people, as a figure perhaps almost bigger than life itself at the time. Okay, you're talking about a man who in 51 decided that things should change socially. Okay, now this was not a schooled gentleman. This was a man, a street-made, streetwise man. But there was conviction. There was conviction on his part. And in a sense, one could say by the time he came to be elected years later, he had by that time accumulated a certain amount of preparation for the role. Because preparation for leadership is critical, right? And so, for example, in 72, he says, listen, he had witnessed other Caribbean countries becoming independent, and so on, Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, Jamaica, Barbados, and he figured he must take Grenada to independence first in the OECS countries. So that is visionary. So we are talking about things. The leader must display some vision, some visionary qualities. He must be able to move from the now and see something bigger for his people down the road. So Gary, in many respects. So 51, he says, listen, we need to rejig this thing. We need for people, black Grenadians, to be represented in the stores and in the banks and in the where and in the where. Because the colonial thing had sort of excluded, had excluded black people from those roles. And he's saying we must correct that. And he's also saying that, listen, you planter class people, you have to pay your laborers better than that and treat them better on the estates. Again, that is a qualitative difference in the lives of thousands and thousands of ordinary people. And that's why one of the reasons why he was so loved. And then you add to that this whole issue of his charisma.
Well, oh yes.
The persona that exudes itself in a way that causes people to say, I like this.
Yes.
I like this man.
I want to be like that.
I want to be around. I want to be near to this man. So that was the Gary. And Morris Bishop, by the way, the book doesn't discuss them in that kind of manner, but it's fair for us to help to educate the young Grenadians in this discussion. Morris Bishop was a charismatic gentleman coming from a different direction, almost a different ethos, really. So we have to remember that. Well, I shouldn't put it that way. Let me see. I have to say that the intrigue and appeal of Bishop started with him as a young lawyer representing nurses in a case against Gary. And in that case, very infamous case now, it's called the nurses' trial. These nurses at the hospital had protested against certain things and so on, and Gary treated them badly. And so there was this case that they brought against the state. A number of top lawyers in the Caribbean came to represent the nurses. And here from Grenada, there was Morris Bishop, fresh on the scene. And I could tell you, I was a little boy in those days. And I would turn up at the courthouse. And when this man stood up to speak, when Morris Bishop, among all of these top-class lawyers in the region, stood up to speak, I mean, it had to do with the voice, the command of the voice. It had to do with his entire persona, being a tall person and so on. Very articulate.
The man had an aura that was unmatched.
Yeah, you see, and so we began to latch on to him from that time. In the years immediately after that, now he's interacting with people now on a political platform. So we first encountered him in the courts as a lawyer, and then that shifted now, and he's engaging with people now in the political interests and confronting the Gary thing and so on, as we discussed last time. So that is the Bishop. So by the time the revolution came, and remember I said the last time that the revolution did not make Bishop a leader for the people. We, the Grenadian people, considered and treated Bishop as leader since 1976.
Right, that's
the elections of 76.
That's quite instructive.
Yeah. So the revolution, when they gained power, appointed him prime minister. He was already leader of their party. They appointed him prime minister. And that distinction between party appointment and popular acceptance has to be borne in mind, because the latter is cultural.
Right. And you see, that again, it brings us right back to the proposition of the joint leadership thing, and how the army and the party officials, saying, okay, so you have to, this is a joint leadership position, and so they kind of like almost taking off his legs. And I think, don't you think that's what the people saw and felt?
Well, you see,
just based on what you explained before?
You see, yes, of course, it will come to that. For them, you see, those people in the NGM at the time, they had worked themselves to a position in the thing where they figured, many of them, that the push ought to be much faster towards socialism.
Okay.
And Bishop was not, in fact, of that mind. He was talking about a process, or evolving the process in a much slower way because of the objective conditions in Grenada. At the time, in other words, he was saying, look guys, Grenada is not ripe for purebred socialism. We're in a phase where, given the characteristics of the country and so on, we need to take our time to get there. I'm putting it.
Yeah, but there were some reports. I mean, there were some reports, to the contrary. They were saying that he always gave, the party. The Politburo, the feeling, that he was on board.
No, you have to understand it. There is something called a soft yes You know, you're in the middle of something. You understand that if you were to say no, it would have certain immediate consequences. You give a soft yes, and you're hoping that thereafter and so on, things will. Discussions will take place and things might work themselves out in a so here we are. So the party can make itself happy, which is what they sought to do, by saying, okay, here's this formula that we want to live by, whereby Bernard Cord is going to head up the party business, the party, and Bishop is going to head up the government. Okay, and that was their definition of joint leadership. And they said to us, Morris accepted that. He said yes to that. I would say it was a soft yes. Put it another way. Even if he were to accept that, I showed you what the consequences, the working out of that would have meant. Because of the fact that the party owned both the PRG and the PRA. So Bernard Cord, as party leader, turns up at Morris Bishop's cabinet meeting on a Monday morning and simply directs what the party wants. Right. And that's the end of the story.
And that's where the power lies.
That's right.
Because they own.
That's right. You see, but here is why they put forward the thing in that way. They were facing the cultural problem.
Right.
They realized that the Grenadian people were not going to accept a situation where Morris Bishop was no longer leader of the people. And so they thought they could have him as you know, a cardboard kind of leader, you know what I mean, a titular leader. He there and he fronting with the people and he's smiling and so on. But the real thing is somewhere else.
But in our history, though, every time we have attempted to do that which you just described, it has blown up in the face of the people who planned it.
Yeah, but that is true. You see, because again, it to me, it has to do with the fact that when it comes face to face with the culture of the people, it can't hold up. It can't hold up. Because if you discuss this somewhere in the book, the party was busy in itself studying this Marxist-Leninist science, if you will. Because for the party, they were concerned about building socialism. Right. But they were never able to tell the Grenadian people that is what they were about.
There was a divide.
They couldn't. You see, there was a cultural problem. I give you an example of a cultural dilemma. So if you go this socialist route and so on, one of the things that you would advocate is state ownership of this and that and the other. But you can say that as policy. How does that settle with the average Grenadian who, since the post-emancipation period, his foreparents and his this and his that, were owners of small plots of land, the Grenadian peasantry. So we are people who are accustomed to ownership.
1795 come all the way up.
So you come and tell us now state ownership. It is clashing with a cultural norm, something that we value.
You have addressed that so brilliantly, and it I mean, after all these years, I think it's easier for people to kind of understand why things happen the way they happen. Not to just look at the things that happen, good or bad, but to actually have an understanding as from whence they came and why they occurred. But we quickly run out of time, so next week we on again. You was in a nice spot there. But there's some readers' feedback. I'd like to give this one this morning from Dr. Carrie Grenade, and she writes that in addition to being generally enlightening and riveting, it provides fresh perspectives that were lacking in other books on the revolution that I have read, and I endorse that fully. I have read a lot of works on the revolution and a lot of papers, because there have been individuals who have done, and in this job I've spoken to a lot of people over the years, some who never came before the cameras, but you know, spoke to me because of my interest and so on, and I've heard many things, but I've never gotten these sort of perspectives. And it's kind of, this is really great work, Mr. Joseph.
Well, I thank
Must
you.
Congratulate you on that. Folks, the book is available to residents in Grenada at Art and Soul Bookstore, or you can give him a call, 405-7804 for the book.
Not to beat me up.
And for those abroad, of course, it is on Amazon, trading on Amazon.com. And we shall continue our conversations on this great piece of work by William B. Joseph, The Grenada Revolution. Of course, Answers, Legacies, and Footprints, a leadership guide to the young Grenadian. So we leave it here for today until we meet next Friday.
Fair enough.
All right. So we good.
We're staying safe and we're staying in faith.
Right. And during this social time, we get to know more of ourselves as Grenadians and who we are and why we are and how we are, what we are.
Some time to reflect.
Some time to reflect. Poignant indeed. Thank you so very much.
Welcome,
All right. That's our program, everyone. Our special guest this morning. Of course, we were speaking to Akira Patterson from Sunshine Promotions earlier. The Mother's Night of Love concert is on, and continuing our conversation here as we look at the literary works of Mr. William B. Joseph and his book, The Grenada Revolution, Answers, Legacies, and Footprints, a leadership guide to the young Grenadian. Coming up next, a midday edition of news. I'm Brenda. So long. Thanks, Mr.